moment when you're trying to speak English and you can feel your brain doing gymnastics? Like you have this perfect sentence in your native language, and then you're desperately trying to translate it word by word, and by the time you open your mouth, the moment's already gone?
Oh, yeah. And the other person is just standing there, waiting, and you can see their face like, "Are you okay?"
Exactly. Well, today we're talking about something that literally changed my relationship with English, and I know that sounds dramatic, but I mean it. We're talking about how to think in English instead of constantly translating in your head.
Welcome to Real Life English, the podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Emma. And if you're new here, this is where we talk about English learning in a way that actually feels real. Like friends, not teachers.
Yeah, we're not going to give you grammar drills or boring vocabulary lists. We're just going to have a real conversation about this topic, and you're going to pick up English naturally while we talk.
So here's what you're getting today. First, we're going to share our own messy journeys with thinking in English, because trust me, it wasn't smooth. Second, you'll learn why your brain is actually fighting against you when you translate and what to do about it. And third, this is the big one, we're giving you a simple daily practice that takes literally 5 minutes and will rewire your brain over time.
This episode is perfect for intermediate learners, so B1 to B2 level. But honestly, if you're below that or above that, you're still going to get something valuable here. We keep things clear and natural.
And if you're not subscribed yet, just hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. We release new episodes every week, and honestly, we put a lot of heart into these. We want to be part of your English learning routine.
Okay, so here's your homework for this episode. After you finish listening, leave us a comment, literally anywhere you're listening to this, or on our social media, and tell us, what language do you think in right now? English, your native language, or is it like a weird mix of both?
Ooh, I love that question because I think most people are going to say mix, and that's actually where the interesting conversation starts.
All right, let's dive in.
So I want to tell you about the moment I realized I had a translation problem. I was living in London. This was years ago, and I was at a small party. Nothing fancy, just like 10 people in someone's tiny apartment. And this guy asked me a simple question. So, Emma, what do you do for fun?
Okay, pretty basic question.
Super basic. But here's what happened in my brain. I immediately thought of my answer in my native language, which is Portuguese. And in Portuguese, I had this beautiful, funny response about how I collect vintage posters and go to weird art shows. But then I had to translate it. And suddenly I'm stuck on the word vintage. Like, is that the right word? Does everyone know what vintage means?
Oh no, I can see where this is going. Ha 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 ha.
By the time I finally answered, probably 5 seconds had passed. And I just said I like art in the most boring way possible. The guy nodded and walked away. And I was standing there thinking, I'm not a boring person. My brain just betrayed me.
Yeah, that's the worst feeling. Because the ideas are there, the personality is there, but there's this weird lag between your brain and your mouth.
Exactly. And what I realized later is that I was filtering everything through translation, which meant I was always going to be slower, always going to sound less like myself.
So when did that start to change for you?
Honestly, it was when I started doing something that felt kind of ridiculous at first. I started narrating my day in English, like in my head as a running commentary.
Wait, like talking to yourself?
Kind of, but silently. So I'd be making breakfast and I'd think, okay, I'm cracking an egg. The pan is hot. I should probably flip this soon or it's going to burn. Just super simple stuff. And at first, it felt so unnatural. Unnatural means it doesn't feel normal or comfortable, like you're forcing it.
Right, because your brain's used to thinking in your native language. You're creating a new habit.
Totally. But after a few weeks, something shifted. I started dreaming in English sometimes. And then I noticed that in conversations, I wasn't translating anymore. The English was just there.
That's actually huge. Because I think a lot of learners don't realize that thinking in English isn't this magical thing that just happens. It's a muscle you build.
Yes. Oh my God, that's the perfect way to describe it.
I had a similar experience, but from a different angle. I'm a native English speaker, but I learned Spanish to a pretty high level. And I remember being so frustrated because I could read Spanish news articles, I could watch movies, but when I tried to speak, I was still translating.
What changed it for you?
I started thinking in Spanish during moments when I wasn't even trying to practice. Like I'd be annoyed at something, maybe traffic or whatever, and instead of cursing in English in my head, I'd curse in Spanish.
That's actually brilliant.
Right? Because emotions are where language becomes real. If you can feel frustrated, happy, excited in your target language, you're not translating anymore. You're living in it.
Okay, so let's talk about what most people get wrong about this whole thinking in English thing.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Do you?
Yeah, people think it's an all-or-nothing switch. Like one day you wake up and suddenly your brain is 100% English.
Exactly. And that's not how it works. It's more like a gradual shift. You start with small moments, then those moments get longer, and eventually English becomes your default for certain situations.
Right. But here's where I actually disagree with you a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
I don't think the goal should be to only think in English. I think it's fine to have a multilingual brain where you switch depending on context.
But doesn't that keep you in translation mode?
Not necessarily. Because if you're truly fluent in both languages, you're not translating, you're code switching. Code switching means moving between two languages naturally depending on the situation, without having to translate.
Okay, I see your point. But I still think for learners who are trying to reach fluency, they need a period where they really immerse themselves in English thinking. Otherwise, they'll always default to their comfort zone.
Fair. I guess it depends on your goal. If you want to sound like a native speaker in English, then yeah, you probably need to spend serious time thinking primarily in English. But if you just want to communicate well, maybe the mix is fine.
I think we're both right, honestly. It's about what works for the individual learner.
Agreed. Okay, so let's talk about why translation is such a problem in the first place.
Yes, because I think a lot of learners don't understand the actual brain science behind this.
So when you translate, you're essentially running two programs at the same time. Your brain is accessing your native language, finding the words, then searching for English equivalents, then constructing a sentence. That's a lot of processing.
It's exhausting. And it's slow. which is why people who think in English sound more fluent. Fluent means you speak smoothly and naturally without a lot of pauses or hesitation.
Exactly. When you think directly in English, you're cutting out that middle step. You're going straight from thought to English words.
And here's the other thing people don't realize. Translation often leads to weird sentences because languages don't have perfect one-to-one matches. An expression that's beautiful in your language might sound totally awkward when you translate it word for word into English.
Oh yeah, I've heard some amazing awkward translations from my students. My favorite was someone trying to say it's raining heavily, but they translated directly from their language and said the rain is very angry.
That's actually kind of poetic, though.
It is. But in English, would say it's pouring or it's coming down hard. And that's the kind of thing you only learn when you start thinking in English, because you pick up these natural phrases instead of trying to construct everything from scratch.
Yes. And here's maybe the most important thing. When you think in English, you start to develop your personality in English. You're not just a translator anymore. You're yourself, but in another language.
That's deep, but true.
Like, I'm funnier in English than I was when I was translating, because I can play with words, I can make spontaneous jokes. When I was translating, I was always 3 steps behind the conversation.
And that's what we want for everyone listening. Not just to communicate, but to actually be themselves.
So I think it's really important to acknowledge that this experience, learning to think in English, looks different depending on where you're from and what your native language is.
Absolutely. Because some languages are much closer to English structurally than others.
Right. Like if you're coming from a Germanic language like German or Dutch, the sentence structure is often similar to English. So thinking in English might feel more natural faster.
But if you're coming from a language like Japanese or Arabic, where the whole sentence structure is completely different, it's a bigger shift.
And there's no judgment in that. It's just reality. If you're from Japan, for example, and in Japanese, the verb comes at the end of the sentence, but in English, it comes in the middle, your brain has to do more restructuring work.
Exactly. And I think learners from those backgrounds should give themselves more credit and more patience.
Yes. Because you're not just learning vocabulary, you're literally rewiring how your brain constructs thoughts.
And then there's the whole cultural piece too. In some cultures, people are used to speaking in a very indirect way, with lots of context and subtlety. But English, especially American English, tends to be more direct.
Ooh, that's such a good point.
Right. Like if you're from a culture where you always soften requests with lots of polite phrases and you directly translate that into English, you might sound overly formal or uncertain.
Yeah, instead of saying I was wondering if perhaps you might possibly consider maybe, you can often just say, could you help me with this?
Exactly. And that's something you learn by consuming English content from native speakers and paying attention to how they actually talk.
So wherever you're listening from, whether that's Brazil, South Korea, Egypt, Poland, anywhere, just know that your journey to thinking in English is valid, even if it looks different from someone else's.
And honestly, having a multilingual brain is a superpower. You're not losing your native language, you're adding another dimension to how you think.
I love that. because I think sometimes learners feel guilty, like they're betraying their native language or culture by thinking in English.
Yeah, and that's not it at all. You're expanding, not replacing.
All right, so let's give everyone something practical they can use right now.
Yes, because talking about thinking in English is great, but people need a concrete tool.
So here's a simple framework. When you want to talk about your language learning journey or your progress with thinking in English, you can use this pattern.
When I started learning English, but now I've been trying. And honestly,
Perfect. So let me give you an example. When I started learning English, I used to translate every single sentence in my head. But now, I've been trying to think in English throughout my day, even for simple things. And honestly, it's making conversations feel so much more natural.
nice. Here's another one. When I started learning English, I was terrified of making mistakes. But now, I've been trying to speak without planning everything perfectly first. And honestly, I'm surprised by how much I already know.
Love that. One more example. When I started learning English, I only practiced during study time. But now, I've been trying to use English in everyday moments, like when I'm cooking or walking. And honestly, it's way less boring than I thought it would be.
See how natural that sounds? You're telling a story about your progress, and the structure keeps you organized.
And you can use this framework in so many situations, not just about language learning. You can use it to talk about any personal growth or change in your life.
Exactly. When I started my new job, but now I've been trying. And honestly,
So that's your gift for today. A simple way to talk about change and progress that sounds natural and confident.
practice using this framework this week, even if it's just in your head while you're thinking in English.
Okay, let's do our word tour. This is where we go back through some of the key vocabulary and expressions we use today so you can really lock them in.
First word, unnatural. This means something doesn't feel normal or comfortable. It feels forced or awkward. At first, thinking in English felt really unnatural, but after practicing for a few weeks, it started to feel normal. Her smile seemed unnatural, like she was forcing it.
Did you catch that one earlier when we used it?
Next up, fluent. When you're fluent in a language, you can speak it smoothly and naturally without a lot of pausing or searching for words. My goal is to become fluent in English by the end of this year. She's fluent in 3 languages: Spanish, English, and Mandarin.
That's one everyone's chasing.
Okay, Emma. Your turn.
All right, let's talk about code switching. This means moving between 2 languages naturally, depending on the situation, without having to translate. A lot of bilingual people code switch when they're talking to other bilinguals. I find myself code switching between English and Portuguese when I'm talking to my family.
Did you catch that one earlier when we used it?
Next one, narrating. This means describing what's happening, like telling a story of events as they unfold. I started narrating my daily activities in English as a practice technique. Sports commentators are really good at narrating the action on the field.
I love that practice method.
Your turn, Max?
Okay, here's a phrase, default to. This means to automatically return to or rely on something as your standard choice. When I'm tired, I default to my native language instead of thinking in English. She always defaults to chocolate ice cream when she can't decide on a flavor.
Did you catch that one earlier when we used it?
Here's another important one. Betray. In our context, we used it to mean something lets you down or works against you. My brain betrayed me when I froze during the conversation. Usually it means to be disloyal to someone. I felt like I betrayed my friend when I shared her secret.
That was such a relatable moment in the story.
All right. What else?
Let's do lag. This is a delay between two things, when there's a gap in time between when something should happen and when it actually happens. There's always a lag between when I think of what to say and when I can actually say it in English. The video call had terrible lag, so our conversation was really awkward.
Did you catch that one earlier when we used it?
Next, pouring. When we say it's pouring, we mean it's raining very heavily. I didn't bring an umbrella, and it started pouring on my way home. It was absolutely pouring yesterday. I got completely soaked.
Such a useful weather expression.
And finally, let's do lock them in. This is a phrase that means to secure something in your memory or make it permanent. Let's review these words one more time to really lock them in. I write new vocabulary in a notebook to help lock it in.
Did you catch that one earlier when we used it?
Perfect. So those are your key words and phrases from today. You don't need to memorize them like a test. Just notice them when you hear them in real English. And try using one or two this week.
All right. So if there's one thing we want you to take away from this episode, it's this.
Thinking in English isn't about perfection or waiting until you're ready. It's about giving your brain permission to play, to stumble, and to build new pathways every single day, even in the smallest moments.
That's beautiful. And true.
So here's what you can do today. Right after this episode ends, try narrating one simple activity in English. Making coffee, walking to the bus, whatever. Just describe what you're doing in simple English sentences. No judgment, no pressure. Just notice how it feels.
And then come tell us about it. Remember our homework question. What language do you think in right now? English, your native language, or a mix? Leave us a comment wherever you're listening. We actually read every single one, and we love hearing from you.
It makes our day, honestly, because this podcast isn't just us talking at you. It's a conversation. You're part of this community.
And if this episode helped you in any way, share it with one friend who's also learning English. Because we grow through you guys sharing these episodes with people who need them.
All right, friends, we're going to let you go, but we'll be back next day with another episode.
Until then, keep practicing, keep being patient with yourself, and remember, you're doing better than you think.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.